Africa Business News, proudly sponsored by EY.
Business News. Highlights from the African Union Summit. Could the South Sudan conflict finally be over? And Nigeria counts down on the presidential elections. Stay tuned.
Africa, it is huge, it is diverse, and its business landscape fascinating and dynamic. And that's our business here on your favorite weekly African business stop. We're joined by Bonnie Tunya in Nairobi, Christy Cole Popola in Lagos, and we'll hear from Tumiso Greater here in Johannesburg. My name is Victor Homoiswan, and this is the Africa Business News. Bonnie, there are two things I want to talk to you about this week. One has to do with your take on the South Sudan agreement, or shall we say lack of. After months of talks in Addis Ababa, is there an agreement or not? Because it looks like President of South Sudan will remain the same, as will the Vice President. What was all the fuss about that led to so many deaths and the disruption of such an economically important oil industry? Of course, of the South Sudan I'm talking about, and of the entire East African community.
Well, Victor, it is sad, but you know the saying that the more things change, the more they remain the same. And South Sudan's warring parties have signed yet another peace deal under the new peace pact. The warring factions, that is led by President Salva Kiir and his ousted deputy Riek Machar, is that they've agreed to adjourn further talks until February the 19th, when the negotiations will resume ahead of the final and comprehensive peace pact on March the 5th. Now, any side which violates this new peace deal, Victor, will face unspecified penalties from both the African Union and the United Nations Security Council. And this is a warning coming out of the AU. So really, it is sad for a country that after all those months of war and economic sabotage and whatnot, they are coming to this. So really sad story for Africa's youngest nation. I
don't think they realize how much they're disrupting the oil industry in that region. But an even bigger story of relevance to Kenya this time and the whole African community comes from the African Union Summit. President Uhuru Kenyatta was at the summit, Bonnie, and he made two salient points. One, the case that the International Criminal Court case against his deputy will fail. Number two, that Africa should have its own alternative to the International Criminal Court. What do you make of these 2 points, considering where Kenya came from with his case there, and of course that another country in the east, that is Sudan, has a case with the ICC?
Well, Victor, for a long time, African countries have been complaining about bullying in the international justice arena. And so the African leaders are trying to forge ahead with plans to set up their own regional court and give themselves some bit of immunity in the process. Now, in a decision last month in the latest sitting in the AU, the leaders unanimously agreed to grant sitting heads of state and senior government officials immunity from prosecution of the African Court for Human Rights and Human and People's Rights, which is not expected to get off the ground in several years now, Victor. In their sitting, Victor, among the 54 African countries, 34 have signed on to the ICC, but several leaders are now questioning that commitment, including Kenya, with calls to have them rather walk out of the ICC. So really, it is a bit of a chaotic situation, but the question is, how practical are these new moves in this African court, Victor?
But of course, life goes on in the East African community. What else caught your attention in the region, if anything, during the rush around the AU summit, Bonnie?
Well, two things that are happening, Victor, in the business world is that the NSC, Nairobi Securities Exchange, is keen to set up a derivatives market. And obviously, this will boost business and create more options for investors in the region. The other thing that was happening, we've been having a very troubled sugar industry. And finally, the government has come out to bail Mumia's sugar. We're talking about $5.5 million US. So obviously, this is a huge reprieve for the cane farmers, Victor.
Okay, thank you, Bonnie Tunya, coming to us from Nairobi, Kenya. We are joined by Tumiso Greater in Southern Africa next. Focus this week is on the recently concluded African Union Summit. Let us hear what Tumiso Greater made of the highlights. Tumiso, Agenda 2063, some of the mega projects included here. Very exciting story. Train network, the Inga 3 hydropower initiative, aviation and power in Africa. How many of these do you think will come to fruition? Because I've been alive much shorter than the Inga project has been under discussion.
Before we get to which ones will come to fruition, I must just tell you one thing that was exciting from a woman's perspective. perspective is the fact that for the 2063 agenda, they are looking at women being at the forefront. So for this year, they were entitling it, powerful women and also empowering women. This is also one of the things where they'd like to really drill into people's minds and perceptions, is that women are not just statistics. They are part of the Africa Rising story. So there are certain things that the AU have put in place, and they want to use this as a measure by 2063. One, they want to eliminate child marriage, and secondly, they want to keep the girls in school. Now, going on to the issue of infrastructure, we have seen that another MOU was signed between China and Africa. Now, as you said, which of these will come to fruition? We do know about the trade ties that exist between Africa and China already, and I think this is just solidifying that. So we're talking about trying to industrialize Africa, putting infrastructure in place in terms of aviation, railways, and so forth. So these are just one of the things that they're putting in place. One of the things that was also very interesting out of the AU summit was the creation of the AU Foundation. So what this means is that we will have African projects being funded by Africa. And how do they propose they do that? Well, the AU leaders have in principle agreed, but this is going to be on a voluntary basis, to basically say that there will be taxes that will be levied on their citizens. So your airline tickets, for example, there will be a levy on that to go towards these infrastructure programs and so forth. We're also looking at taxes on hotel stays and even text messages. So these are just some of the developments and highlights that came out of the AU.
Well, Agenda 2063, that will be the 100-year celebration or anniversary of the African Union. Let's see what happens come July this year when they meet again. Next up, Christy Cole Popola takes us through some of the highlights of the week from West Africa as we wrap up Africa Business News. Christy Cole, the countdown to the elections has resulted in serious contestations in the public media, especially the public spat between Finance Minister and former Central Bank Governor, Professor Soludo. Although this can be seen in different ways, including electioneering, I'm intrigued about the reference to the economy of Nigeria and its banking sector. Share with us some of your take on the economic highlights of the last few days leading up to the elections. Of course, only 14th of February, more so that the central bank is under pressure somewhat to respond to the negative watch by JP Morgan of a couple of weeks ago.
Definitely outside oil, Nigeria's banking sector is another sector that is critical to Nigeria's economy. So it is really not out of place for it to be at the center of a debate at this critical time, just 11 days to the elections. Outside the perceived electioneering basis that you mentioned, the squabble between Nigeria's former central bank governor, Charles Soludo, and Nigeria's finance minister, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, have brought to the fore arguments which everyday Nigerians may otherwise have not heard of nor thought about at all. Talks of statistics comparing inflation rates over the years, domestic and external debt, and the justification for the forthcoming austerity measures, management of the country's banking system. Now, everyday Nigerians are interested in these affairs largely as a result of the squabble between the personalities involved. Now, the ongoing war of words between the two started when former governor of Central Bank, Charles Soludo, and the Minister of Finance, Okonjo-Iweala, started with Soludo's published outbursts critiquing the finance minister's management of the economy and the planned introduction of austerity measures. The latest of the drama is the former CBN governor's challenge to the finance minister to give account of the 30 million naira reportedly stolen under her watch. Now, allegations which Iweala has very quickly refuted.
Well, again, we've heard about what happened at the African Union Summit in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia this past weekend. The issue of illicit capital outflows is not a particularly Nigerian phenomenon, Christy Cole, but ActionAid, the NGO, particularly urging Nigeria to act on this matter, and rightfully so. What is the extent of illicit financial outflows from Nigeria?
With Nigeria ranking an embarrassing third country with the largest number of world's poor at 33% on the World Bank's 2014 Poverty Index, despite its astounding GDP, there is absolutely a need to pay special attention to curbing illicit financial outflows from the country, which are now at an astounding annual losses of about $15.74 billion. So when you consider the huge impact of illicit financial outflows on Nigeria's economy, especially at the time when when the country's major revenue source, crude, has been eroded, you would agree that no country should be more eager to implement the Mbeki panel report than Nigeria. Those leakages, when blocked, will go a long way to helping the campaign to eradicate poverty.
$15.7 billion, that makes it close to, if not more than 30% of the 50 billion illicit capital outflows coming from the continent, according to the report that you referred to. That takes us to the trivia of the week, of course, and we also get to hear about the favorite stocks of Christy Cole and Bonnie. Stay with Africa Business News. Bonnie and Christy Cole, at this point I ask you, with the $10,000 I have got to invest, which share would you pick in your region and why? Christy Cole?
Okay, I'll put my money on Zenith Bank, and that's because it has a tradition of being the first bank to publish their results. So a few bargain hunters should be taking positions in the stock this week ahead of the earnings that should be published at the end of February. Results I think would reinforce the appetite of investors in the stocks, which I believe is already oversold at 16 Naira.
Okay, Zenith, a bank again for 2 weeks in a row coming out of Lagos. How about you, Bonnie Tunya in Nairobi?
Well, Victor, for me, this time around, I'll have to go with the insurance industry. The sector has been performing above average in the Kenyan market, doing very well despite the different times of the economy. My particular pick will be CIC Insurance, has a share price at just about 1060, has been moving up consistently at an average rate of just about 6% for the past about 6 months. So really, this is a good place to put your money. There's a lot of stability here. And looking at the history of insurance sector, this is somewhere you can't go wrong.
Well, a bank and an insurance company, yet again, that shows you where the financial sector is going on the African continent. Well, thank you, Bonnie Tunya and Christy Cole. But before we go in our trivia this week, I wish I could say the one to get the answer right will get a holiday, because there are 2 islands involved in the question. Bonnie, Christy Cole, name any of the 3 African countries, 2 islands, where February the 3rd is a holiday. 2 of the countries are Portuguese-speaking, of course, and the 3rd, a French-speaking one, among the many other clues that I can give you, but I will not. What do you think?
I'll take Mozambique. You gave it away with the Portuguese-speaking hint.
Okay, let's hear. Christy Cole, do you have a... Mozambique is right, yes. And what else?
No idea. So
no
gets
idea.
The holiday.
Sao Tome and Principe is the island you're looking for. In West Africa, they are the 2 Portuguese-speaking nations celebrating Heroes' Day and Martyrs' Day, both in honor of the fallen heroes in the struggle for independence, Mozambique especially in memory of his founding father, Eduardo Mondlane, who led Frelimo in the Portuguese colonial war between 1961 and 1974. Mauritius, on the other hand, celebrate what is known as Taiposan Kavadi, although this is a mainly popular holiday among the Indo-Mauritians whose ancestors were from Tamil Nadu in India. We wish all the people of Mauritius a happy Taiposan Kavadi, and those of South Tome, Principe and Mozambique, a memorable Martyrs and Heroes' Day respectively. We are back with you next week with more Africa Business News. We thank Bonnie Tunya in Nairobi, Christy Cole Popola out of Lagos, and Elia Tumis of Greater in Johannesburg. Stay tuned to CNBC Africa. Best wishes to your team in the African Cup of Nations. Until next week, Kwaherini.